Welcome to Daily Harmony. Today we're diving deep into, well, a really fundamental idea, something that could potentially shift how you see everything.
Yeah, that's a big one.
We're exploring Lesson 219 from A Course in Miracles. I am not a body, I am free.
And that line, it really bumps up against how we usually experience life, doesn't it?
And absolutely.
I mean, we navigate everything through our bodies, our senses. Physical experience is kind of our default setting. So this idea that we're not fundamentally this physical thing, it takes a bit of a mental leap.
It really does. We pour so much energy into our bodies, how they look, how they feel, what they can do, what they can't do. Our whole sense of self often feels completely tied up in this physical reality. But the Course, and this lesson specifically, asks us to consider, well, something radically different.
That our true identity, our core self, is actually beyond the physical. And that's really what we want to unpack today, isn't it? Not just the words themselves, but what they mean for who we are. Why does this distinction matter? And maybe most importantly for you listening, how can you start exploring this idea in your own life?
Right. Well, look at how identifying so strongly with the body can kind of, well, trap us in certain ways.
And how seeing ourselves differently, seeing this spiritual identity, might open up a path to a different kind of freedom. Freedom maybe even from things like pain, aging, limitation, things we often just accept as part of life.
Okay, so let's start right there with the core statement. I am not a body, I am free. What's the main point here? What's the shift in understanding being proposed?
Well, the Course basically presents this as a correction to like a fundamental mistake we've made about who we are.
A mistake.
Yeah, like we've mistaken the car for the driver, we experience everything through the body, no doubt. But the Course argues that our fundamental nature, our essence, isn't defined by the physical stuff. It suggests our true roots are spiritual, in a reality that isn't subject to all the ups and downs, the eventual decay of the physical form. It's presented not just as a nice idea, but as a kind of foundational truth about us.
Okay, so if we're not just physical beings, what does it actually mean to say our true identity is spiritual? Can you draw that distinction a bit more clearly? Physical versus spiritual self.
Sure. Think of the body as temporary,
Yeah.
always changing, right? It's born, it grows, it ages, feels good, feels bad.
Standard stuff, right?
The spiritual identity, though, the Course presents that as eternal, unchanging, constant. It's not bound by the physical rules in the same way. So believing the body's kind of like focusing entirely on the clothes someone's wearing and totally missing the actual person inside.
That's a helpful analogy, and the Course often connects identifying only with the body to experiencing things like pain, suffering, and limitation. Let's dig into that connection. How does thinking of ourselves just as physical beings lead to those experiences?
Well, think about how much worry revolves around just our physical appearance.
Well, yeah.
The whole beauty industry, right?
Yeah.
It thrives on us identifying with how we look. And the fear of aging, the judgments we make about ourselves, about others, based on physicality, that all stems from equating our value with our bodies.
It's so ingrained.
Totally.
Yeah.
And then there's the fear of getting sick, or the real limitations that can come from an injury or a chronic condition. If you believe this body is all you are, then those things feel like fundamental threats to your very existence, to your self-worth.
Right. It attacks your core sense of self.
Exactly. Even something like, say, physical tension. It can often reflect this underlying belief that we're just these vulnerable physical things, constantly needing to brace ourselves.
Okay, I think everyone can relate to those anxieties, appearance, illness, limitations. So if we start to really take in, I am not a body, how does that connect to the second part? I am free. What's the link there? How does this freedom happen?
The freedom comes, the Course suggests, from realizing that your true self, your core essence, isn't actually subject to all those physical vulnerabilities.
So it's like shifting perspective.
Yeah, exactly. When you start to see yourself as primarily spiritual, then pain becomes, well, an experience the body is having, but not something that defines you. Aging is just a process the physical form goes through, but your core self isn't aging.
Okay.
Limitations feel less absolute, because you recognize there's a deeper part of you that isn't limited in the same way. It's about moving your anchor, your sense of identity, from the temporary and fragile body to the eternal and resilient spirit.
That's a powerful idea. It's also interesting how the sources link this understanding to healing and forgiveness. They don't spell out the exact mechanism, but what do you think the connection is there?
I think it implies that when we see beyond the physical form in ourselves and in other people, it helps us let go of judgments and grudges.
How so?
Well, a lot of resentment is based on physical actions, right?
Right.
Things people did, perceived physical harms. But if you recognize a shared spiritual essence underneath all that, it can foster more empathy, more understanding,
Yeah.
which are pretty crucial for healing yourself and also for mending relationships. If you see others and yourself as more than just bodies that can hurt or be hurt, it kind of opens the door to forgiveness, doesn't it?
Yeah, it reframes the whole interaction. And another big outcome mentioned is this profound shift in perspective that helps us transcend fear and embrace love. Why is fear so tied up with identifying with the body?
Fear, in so many ways, seems like the shadow side of feeling vulnerable as a physical being.
Makes sense.
We fear loss, we fear pain, and ultimately we fear death because we think that's the end of us.
Right. Sure.
But if your fundamental identity, who you really are, is eternal and spiritual, then the power of those physical threats has to diminish.
Right. It loses its ultimate sting.
Exactly. Recognizing that shifts your focus away from what you can lose towards what you eternally are. And the Course suggests that this recognition naturally leads you towards love because love is seen as our true underlying nature, which gets obscured by all the fear that comes from thinking we're just bodies.
This really is a compelling way to look at things. So for someone listening right now thinking, okay, this sounds interesting, maybe even freeing, but how do I actually do this? What are some practical ways to start exploring this?
The Course offers a few concrete things. Meditation is a big one, specifically just repeating the affirmation, I am not a body, I am free.
Just repeating it.
Well, not just mindlessly. The idea is to let the meaning sink in, to use the repetition, to start loosening the automatic assumption that you are your body. It's about trying to cultivate that inner peace that comes from connecting with your spiritual side.
Okay, meditation. What else? Journaling was mentioned?
Yeah, journaling is great for reflection. You could, for instance, write about a time you felt really limited by your body. Maybe you were sick or injured or just frustrated by some physical thing. Then try to look back at that experience through this new lens. Ask yourself, did that limitation truly define all of me in that moment? What parts of my being, my awareness, my spirit were actually untouched by that physical issue? It's about re-examining things.
Reevaluating past experiences with this new idea in mind.
Exactly. And then there's mindfulness practice throughout the day.
How does that fit in?
It's about bringing awareness to your thoughts and feelings, especially when things get tough. When you notice you're getting stressed about something physical or anxious about your body, just gently remind yourself, okay, but I am not just this body. I am free.
Like a little mental check-in.
Sort of. It creates a bit of space. Space to recognize that your experience isn't solely dictated by the physical sensations or the emotions of the moment. There's a deeper, more resilient you in there. And remembering that can give you, well, more freedom in how you respond.
And there was that reflection question provided in the sources, which seems really useful. In what ways can I remind myself that my true identity is not tied to my physical body, especially during challenging situations? That feels like a key takeaway for people to ponder.
Absolutely. It makes it active. It asks you, the listener, to find your own personal ways to connect with this, to create those little mental reminders, those anchors that can pull you back to your spiritual identity when the physical world feels like it's closing in.
It's definitely worth mentioning, too, that this whole perspective is, well, it's pretty different from the mainstream view, isn't it? Society puts such a heavy emphasis on the physical, the material.
Oh, completely. Our culture often ties worth directly to how you look, success to what you own. And there's this huge fear surrounding the body's decline.
Yeah.
So embracing this teaching, I am not a body, you can feel almost countercultural.
Yeah.
But the potential payoff is huge, an alternative to all that anxiety. It invites you to find a deeper, more lasting source of value and identity within yourself.
So wrapping up this deep dive on Lesson 219, it really leaves us with this powerful invitation, doesn't it? To reconsider who we fundamentally are, to look beyond the physical form.
Yeah, and just by entertaining that possibility that our essence is spiritual, eternal, the Course suggests we open a door to potentially profound freedom.
Freedom from those limitations, the pain, the fears that seem so tied to seeing ourselves as purely physical beings.
And the practical tools we talked about, the meditation, the journaling, the mindfulness moments, they offer real, tangible ways to start exploring this shift in your own daily life.
So as you go about your day, maybe just keep that question gently in mind. In what ways can I remind myself that my true identity is not tied to my physical body?
That simple question, that little bit of curiosity, it really could be the start of a very different and maybe very liberating journey.
Thank you for taking this deep dive with us today. We really encourage you to keep exploring these ideas, mull them over, and see what resonates most deeply with your own experience.